Please go ahead.
तरुणारुणमणि किरणावळि निहर तरुमचरमण महिழ்माலை தெருநாதிய திருவடியார் தெருமரள் தெளிய பரபுடல் பொருளாக கருணாகரமுனி ரமணாரியனுவ ஐனார் சொல்லியது கதியாக அருணாச்சலமென அருணாச்சலமே அகமே அறிவோது மாழ்வார் சிவனுல ஆழ்வாரே அருணாச்சலவர கேற்ற அச்சரமண மாலை சாற்ற கருணா கரகணபதியே கரமருளி காப்பாயே அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தைவே அறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா அழகு சுந்தரம் போல் அகமும் நீயும் அபிநமயிருப்போம் அருணாச்சலா அகம்புகுந்தீர் தொன் அககுகை சிறையாய் அமர் விட்டதென்கொள் அருணாச்சலா ஆறு காவனை ஆந்தனை அகற்றில் அகிலம் பழித்திடும் அருணாச்சலா ஹே பழித்த புனையே நினை பேத்தாய் இனி யார் விடுவார் அருணாச்சலா என்றிடும் அன்னையில் பெரிதருள் புரிவோய் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா உனையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுலத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா ஊர் சோற்றுலம் விடதுனை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழை காட்டருணாச்சலா என்னை அழித்தே போதனை கலவாவிடில் இதுவோ ஆண்மை அருணாச்சலா ஏன் இந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிற இழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா ஐம்புல கள்வர் அகத்தினில் போகும்போ தகத்தில் நீ இல்லையோ அருணாச்சலா ஒருவன முன்னை ஒளித்தேவர் வருவார் உன் சோதே இது அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா ஓங்கார பொருளோ புயர்வில்லாய் உனையார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா அவ்வை போல் என கொண்டருளை தந்தனை ஆளுவதுங்கடன் அருணாச்சலா கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணாய் கண்ணின்றி காணுனை காணுவதவர் பார் அருணாச்சலா காந்தமிரும்பு போல் கவர்ந்தனை விடாமல் கலந்தேனோயிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா கிரியுருவாகிய கிருபை கடலே கிருபை கூந்தருளுவாய் அருணாச்சலா கீழ்மேலெங்கும் கிளரொளி மணியன் கீழ்மை பாழ்சை அருணாச்சலா கூற்றமுரத்தனை குணமாய் பணித்தாள் குரு ஒருவாயொளிர் அருணாச்சலா கூர்வாட்கண்ணியர் கொடுமயிர் படாதருள் கூந்தனை சேந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா கெஞ்சியும் வஞ்சியாய் கொஞ்சமுன் மிரங்கிலை அஞ்சலன்றே அருள் அருணாச்சலா கேளாதளிக்கும் முன் கேடில் புகழை கேடு செய்யாதருள் அருணாச்சலா கையினிற் கணியொன்மை ரசங்கொண்டு வகை வெறி கொலவருள் அருணாச்சலா கொடியேத்தடியரை கொல்லுனை கட்டி கொண்டெங்கன் வாழ்வேன் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா கோபமில் குணத்தோய் குறியாயனை கொல கூரையன் செய்தேன் அருணாச்சலா கௌதமர் போற்றும் கருணை மாமலையே கடை கணி தாழ்வாய் அருணாச்சலா. You can't hear?
Prasad, we can hear you.
Okay. சகலமும் விளங்கும் கதிரொளியினமன ஜலஜமலர்த்தி அருணாச்சலா சாப்பாடுன்னை சாந்துனவாயான் சாந்தமை போவன் அருணாச்சலா சேத்தங்குளிர கடிர தம்மை தமுதவ யைத்திர அருள்மதி அருணாச்சலா சீரையளித்து நிர்வாணம செய்தரு சீரையளித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா சுக கடல் பொங்க சொல்லுணர்வடங்க சும்மா பொருந்திடன் அருணாச்சலா சோது செதென்னை சோதியதினியுன் ஜோதியோரோ காட்டருணாச்சலா சேப்படி வித்தை காற்றேப்படி மய கோவித்தொரு படு வித்தை காட்டருணாச்சலா சேராயணின்மை நீராயுருகிக்கன் நீராற்றளிவேன் அருணாச்சலா செய்யன தள்ளிர் செய்வினை சுடுமலலுய்வகையேதருள் அருணாச்சலா சொல்லாது சொல்லினி சொல்லரனில் என்று சும்மாயிருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா சோம்பியாய் சும்மா சுகமுந்துரங்கிடல் சொல்வேரங்கதி அருணாச்சலா சௌரியங்காத்தினை சழ கற்றதென்றே சளியாயிருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா ஞமலியர் கேடா நான் என்னுருதிய நாதி நின்னுருவேன் அருணாச்சலா ஞானமில்லாதுன்னாசையற்றளவர ஞானந்தெரித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா நிமிருப்போ நீயும் மலந்திலை என்றே நேர் நின்றனையன் அருணாச்சலா தத்துவந்தெரியாதத்தனையோற்றாய் தத்துவமிடுவேன் அருணாச்சலா தானே தானே தத்துவமிடனை தானே காட்டுவாய் அருணாச்சலா திரும்பிய ஹந்தனை தினமக கண்காண் தெரியுமென்றனையேன் அருணாச்சலா தீரமில்லகத்தில் தேடியுந்திரனையான் திரும்பவுற்றேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா தோப்பறிவில்லாய் பிறப்பெண் பயன் ஒப்பிடவாயேன் அருணாச்சலா தூய் மனமொழியார் தோயும் உண்மையகம் தோயவே அருளேன் அருணாச்சலா தெய்வமென்றொன்னை சாரவே என்னை சேர ஒளித்தாய் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா தேடாதுத்ரனல் திருவருள் நிதியகத்தியக்கம் தீர்த்தருள் அருணாச்சலா தைரியமோடும் உண்மையம் நாதயந்தழிந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா தோத்தருள் கைமே கட்டிடாயனிலியன் நட்டமாவேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா தோடமில் நீயக தோதொன்று என்றும் சந்தோடம் ஒன்றிடவருள் அருணாச்சலா நகை கிடமில்லை நின்னாதியவனை அருள் நகையிட்டு பார் நீ அருணாச்சலா நானிலை நாதிட நானாயொன்றினி தானுவதென்றனை அருணாச்சலா நின்னேரெறிதனை நீராக்கிடமுன் நின்னருள் மழை பொழி அருணாச்சலா நீ நான் அறப்பொலி நிடங்களிமயமா நின்றிட நிலை அருள் அருணாச்சலா நுண்ணுருவுனையான் விண்ணுரு நன்னிடையன்னலையிருமேன் அருணாச்சலா நூலறிவறியா பேதையனென்றான் மாலறிவர் தருள் அருணாச்சலா நேக்கொனை குருகியான் போக்கிடவுனை புகழ் நக்கணனிந்திரனை அருணாச்சலா நேசமில்லென கொன்னாசை காட்டினி மோசஞ்செய்யாதருள் அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா நைந்தளி கணியா நலநிலை படத்தில் நாடியுட்கொள் நல்லம் அருணாச்சலா நொந்திடதொன்றனை தந்தனை கொண்டிலை அந்தகனீயன கருணாச்சலா நோக்கியை கருதிமை தாக்கியை பக்குவமாக்கினியாந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா பற்றிமால் விடந்தலை ஊற்றிரமுனமர் பற்றிட அருள் பொறி அருணாச்சலா பார்த்தருள் மாலர பார்த்திலையனிலருள் பாருணக்கார் சொல்வர் அருணாச்சலா பித்துணை நேர்பித்தனாக்கினை அருள் பேத்தம் தெளி மருண் அருணாச்சலா பீதியில் உனை சார் பீதியில் என்னை சேர் பீதியுந்திரனக்கேன் அருணாச்சலா புல்லறிவேதுரை நல்லறிவேதுரை புல்லிடவே அருள் அருணாச்சலா பூமன மாமன பூரண மனங்கொல பூரண மனமருள் அருணாச்சலா பெயர் நினைத்திடவே பிடித்தெழுத்தனையொன் பெருமையார் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா பேய்தனம் விட விட பேயாய் பிடித்தனை பேயனக்கினையேன் அருணாச்சலா பைங்கொடியானான் பற்றின்றி வாடாமல் பற்று கொடாய் கருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachalam. பொடியால் மயக்கியன் போதத்தை பறித்தொன் போதத்தை காட்டினை அருணாச்சலம். போகும் வரவுமில் பொது வெளியினில் அருள் போராட்டங்காட்டருணாச்சலம். பௌதிக மாமுடல் பற்றற்று நாளும் முன் பவிசு கந்தூரவருள் அருணாச்சலம். மலை மருந்திட நீ மலை திடவோ அருள் மலை மருந்தாயொளிர் அருணாச்சலம். மானங்கோதோருப்பவர் மானத்தை அழித்த அபிமானமில்லாதொளிர் அருணாச்சலம். மிஞ்சிடல் கெஞ்சிடும் கொஞ்சவரிவனியான் வஞ்சியதருளனை அருணாச்சலம். மீகாமல் நில்லாமல் மா காற்றலை கலம் ஆகாமல் காத்தருள் அருணாச்சலம். முடியடி காணா முடிவிட தனை நேர் முடிவட விட கடநிலை அருணாச்சலம். மூக்கில முன்காட்டு முக்குர மகாதனை தூக்கிய நைந்தருள் அருணாச்சலம். மெய்யகத்தின் மனமென் மனரணையில் நம்மை கலந்திடவருள் அருணாச்சலம். மேல் மேல் தாழ்ந்திடும் மெல்லிய சேந்துனி மேன்மயுற்றணையேன் அருணாச்சலம். மைமய நீத்தருள் மையினலுனதுன் மைவசமாக்கினை அருணாச்சலம். அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல. மோட்டையதித்தனை வேத்தவலியினி நட்டமாதினையேன் அருணாச்சலம். மோகந்தவீத்துன் மோகமவை துமென் மோகந்திராயேன் அருணாச்சலம். மௌனியாய் கற்போல் மலராதிருந்தால் மௌனமிதாமோ அருணாச்சலம். யவனின் வாயில் மண்ணினையத்தே என் பிழை பொழித்த அருணாச்சலம். யாருமறியாதென் மதியினை மறுத்தி எவர் கொலை கொண்ட அருணாச்சலம். ரமணனை துரைத்தேன் ரோஷங்கொள்ளாதனை ரமித்திட செய்யவா அருணாச்சலம். ராப்பகலில்லா வெறுவெளி வீட்டில் ரமித்திடுவோம் வா அருணாச்சலம். லட்சியம் வைத்தருள் அஸ்திரம் வீத்தனை பச்சிதாய் பிராணனோ அருணாச்சலம். லாபனிய பர லாபமில்லனையுற்று லாபம் என்னோற்றனை அருணாச்சலம். வரும்படி சொல்லிலை வந்தன்படி அல வருந்திடும் தலை விதி அருணாச்சலம். வாவெந்திரம்புக்குன் வாழ்வருள் அன்றே என் வாழ்வழுந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலம். வேட்டிடல் கட்டமாம் விட்டிடாதுனை உயிர் வேட்டிட அருள் புரி அருணாச்சலம். அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல. வீடுவு தீர்த்துல விடுப்புக்கு பையவுன் வீடு கதினை அருள் அருணாச்சலம். வெளிவிட்டேன் உன் செயல் வெறுத்திடதுன் அருள் வெளிவிட்டனை காட்டருணாச்சலம். வேதாந்தத்தே வேரற விளங்கும் வேத பொருள் அருள் அருணாச்சலம். வைதலை வாழ்த்தா வைத்தருள் கூடிய வைத்தனை விடதருள் அருணாச்சலம் அம்புவிலாலி போல் அன்புருவுனிலனை அன்பா கரை தருள் அருணாச்சலம் அருணை அந்திரனை யான் அருள் கனிப்பட்டேன் உன் அருள்வலை தப்புமோ அருணாச்சலம் சிந்தி தருள் பட சில்லந்தி போல் கட்டி சிறையே தொந்தனை அருணாச்சலம் அன்போடு நாமங்கள் அன்பர்தம் அன்பர் கண்பனாயிடவருள் அருணாச்சலம் எம்போலும் தீனரை இன்புற காத்துனி என்னாலும் வாழ்ந்தருள் அருணாச்சலம் என்பொரு அன்பர்தம் இன் சொர்க்கச் செவியுமின் பொன்மொழி கொல்லவருள் அருணாச்சலம் பொறுமையம்பூதர பொன் சொலை நன்சொல பொறு தருள் இஷ்டம்பின் அருணாச்சலம் மாலையளித்தருணாச்சல ரமண என் மாலையளிந்தருள் அருணாச்சலம் மாலையளித்தருணாச்சல ரமண என் மாலையனிந்தருள் அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலம் அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி.
Thank you, Prashant. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Welcome all to the fellow devotees. Today, we are going to start with recorded by Dr. Anil Sharma in 2005. We are going to see the video and the audio of that one. Bhaskar?
Okay, I'll play.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Called Jatavara, is it?
And go.
15th March 1946. A visitor from Pune, who has been here for the last 2 or 3 days, asked some questions, and Bhagavan told him, Mukti or liberation is our nature. It is another name for us. Our wanting mukti is a very funny thing. It is like a man who is in the shade, voluntarily leaving the shade, going into the sun, feeling the severity of the heat there, making great efforts to get back into the shade, and then rejoicing. How sweet is the shade! I have after all reached the shade. We are all doing exactly the same. We are not different from the reality. We imagine we are different. That is, we create the Veda Bhava, the feeling of difference, and then undergo great sadhana to get rid of the Veda Bhava and realize the oneness. Why imagine or create Veda Bhava and then destroy it? In the afternoon, Dr. Masala Wala, does that mean he's a seller of masala? He sells masala? Wala means like they have chai wala. And this guy's selling masala, like, you know, that's the spicy, right? That can't be true, right? Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's how he got his name? His traditional name, I guess. Dr. Masala Wala. I'm not recording for the internet, you know. I'm making sure that this wasn't be qualifying.
I understand.
I'm not going to change my style.
I understand your approach here.
I'm not going to change my style just because of that little black box. Dr. Masalawala placed in Bhagavan's hand a letter he had received from his friend, V.K. Ajgonkar. I think that's Maharashtrian, that name. A gentleman of about 35, a follower of Gyaneshwar Maharaj, who was Maharashtrian, who is said to have attained jnana in his 28th year. The letter said, "You call me Purna. Who is not Purna in this world?" Bhagavan agreed and continued in the vein in which he discoursed this morning and said, "We limit ourselves first, then seek to become the unlimited that we always are. All effort is only for giving up the notion that we are limited." The letter further said, the first verse of the Ishvasya Upanishad says the world is Purna. It simply cannot be anything else, as its very existence is built on the Purna. Bhagavan approved of this also and said, there is this typed letter, for instance. To see the world alone and not the Purna or self would be something like saying, I see the letters but not the paper. While it is the existence of the paper that makes the existence of the letters possible. Dr. Masalawala said, in the letter we see the paper, but we are able to see only the world, and we don't see God. Bhagavan replied, what happens in sleep? Where did the world go then? Then you alone or the self alone existed. The letter also said, Gyaneshwar Maharaj has said God will never forsake his bhakta who has undivided love for him. Bhagavan said, every saint, every book says so. I have been reading Ram Das's writings. Here too, so many verses, and Ramachandra will never forsake his bhakta. So saying, Bhagavan read out a few of those verses. The letter went on to say, Ramana Maharshi is an exponent of Ajata doctrine, of Advaita Vedanta. Of course, it is a bit difficult. Bhagavan remarked on this. Somebody has told him so. I do not teach only the Ajata doctrine. I approve of all school. The Ajata means that nothing existed. There was no sadhaka, right? No sadhana, no person, no individual.
No mukti, no one wanting mukti.
Yeah. Called Ajata Vada, is it? The Ajata doctrine says nothing exists except the one reality. There is no birth. Or he goes on to explain a little better here. There is no birth or death, no projection or drawing in, no sadhaka, no mumukshu, no mukta, no bondage, no liberation. The one unity alone exists ever. To such as find it difficult to grasp this truth, and who ask, how can we ignore this solid world we see all around us? The dream experience is pointed out, and they are told, all that you see depends on the seer. Apart from the seer, there is no seen. And this is called the Drishti Shrishti Vada, or the argument that one first creates out of his mind and then sees what his mind itself has created. To such as cannot grasp even this, who further argue, the dream experience is so short, while the world always exists, the dream experience was limited to me, but the world is felt and seen not only by me, but by so many. And we cannot call such a world non-existent. The argument called Shrishti Drishti Vada is addressed, and they are told, God first created such and such a thing, out of such and such an element, and then something else, and so forth. That alone will satisfy this class. Their mind is otherwise not satisfied, and they ask themselves, How can all geography, all maps, all sciences, stars, planets, and the rules governing or relating to them, and all knowledge be totally untrue? To such it is best to say, yes, God created all this, and so you see it. Dr. Masalawala said, but all these cannot be true. Only one doctrine can be true. Bhagavan said, all these are only to suit the capacity of the learner. The absolute can only be one. The letter further said, Avya Bicharani Bhakti is the only necessary thing. As Dr. Masalawala did not understand what Avya Bicharani Bhakti meant, Bhagavan explained that it only meant bhakti to God without any other thought occupying the mind. Bhagavan said, Ananya Bhakti, Ekagrata Bhakti, all mean the same thing. The letter continued, in the mind two things do not exist at the same time, either God or samsara. Samsara is already there. That is to be reduced little by little, and God is to be entered in its stead. Bhagavan remarked on this, God is there already, not samsara. Only you do not see it on account of the samsara rubbish you have filled your mind with. Remove the rubbish and you will see God. If a room is filled with various articles, the space in the room has not vanished anywhere. To have space, we have not to create it, but only to remove the articles stocked in the room. Even so, God is there. If you turn the mind inward instead of outward on things, then you see the mind merges in the one unity which alone exists. Bhagavan also agreed with the writer when he said that to see God, Guru's grace is necessary, for which again God's anugraha is necessary, which in its turn could be had only by upasana. The letter conveyed the writer's namaskar to Bhagavan. Thereupon Bhagavan said, the mind merging in its source, the one unity, is the only true namaskar. 16th March 1946. Ceylan Ramachandra sent me the 5 songs recently composed by him in Tamil on Bhagavan and his grace towards him, in saving him this time through all his serious illness, and sent word that I should read them before Bhagavan. So at about 10:30 a.m. I read out all the 5 songs, putting myself in Ramachandra's place and trying to render the songs with their full bhava. The previous day, 2 of these songs alone were ready and had been shown to Bhagavan by Mrs. R., Mr. Vishwanath, and had already written them out in the Stotra book. Bhagavan made a few corrections and divided the feet, chair, I read the Tamil there, that one syllable word I can read, properly, with the sandhi properly joined and not split as R had written. In the evening, Mr. V wrote down the remaining 3 verses also in the book of stotras kept in the hall. You know, Vishwanathan, he translated all of talks into Tamil. Have you seen that? They have it at Ramarashram, I'm sure. Yeah. 17th March 1946. Looking at the outgoing mail, Bhagavan remarked, Eknath's mother has passed away. Do you know? Mr. R. Narayana Iyer replied, yes. I saw in the mail an announcement to the effect. Bhagavan then remarked, she and her husband, the late Dr. Nanjunda Rao, came to me even when I was in Virupaksha cave. After that, too, they came once or twice. The last time, they came here with one Chakarai Amal, a lady who had learned something and had a following of her own, and whom the doctor also regarded as a sort of guru. They were, I think, returning from a pilgrimage to Benares and other places. On the 18th of March, 1946, Mr. Girdhari Lal, an old resident of Aurobindo Ashram, came here last evening and is staying at the ashramam. He asked Bhagavan this morning, it is said in the Puranas that the Kali Yuga consists of so many thousands of years, and that so much of it has passed, and that so much yet remains, etc. May I know when this Yuga is to end? Bhagavan said, I don't consider time real, so I take no interest in such matters. We know nothing of the past or the yugas which were in the past, nor do we know about the future, but we know the present exists. Let us know about it first, then all other doubts will cease. After a pause, he added, time and space always change, but there is something which is eternal and changeless. For example, the world and time, past or future, nothing exists for us during sleep, but we exist. Let us try to find out that which is changeless and which always exists. How will it benefit us to know that the Kali Yuga started in such and such a year, and that it would end in so many years after now? Girdhari Lal, I know, from the standpoint of one whose level of consciousness is beyond time and space, such questions are useless. But to us, struggling souls, it may be important in this way. It is said that in the previous yugas, for example, Satya Yuga, man had not fallen to the low level in which he now is in this Kali Yuga, and that it was much easier for him then to obtain liberation than now. Bhagavan, on the other hand, it is said it is much easier to secure salvation in this Yuga than in the Satya Yuga. Some days or hours of penance in this Yuga would secure what several years of penance alone could have secured in those yugas. That is what the books say. Further, there is nothing to attain and no time within which to attain. You are always that. You have not got to attain anything. You have only to give up thinking you are limited. To give up thinking you are this upadi, or body. Girdhari Lal. Then, why do these Puranas give the exact duration of each yuga in so many years? Bhagavan, there might be an allegorical meaning in the number of years mentioned for each yuga, or the immensity of the periods of time assigned to each yuga may be a mere device to draw man's attention to the fact that, though he should live up to his full span of 100 years, his life would be such a trifling, insignificant fraction in the entire life of the universe, and that he should therefore take a proper view of his own humble place in the entire scheme, and not go about with a swollen head, deeming himself as of great importance, instead of saying, what is man's life compared to eternity? They have taught him to consider how short his span is. Further, it is said, there is a regular cycle of such yugas, and who knows how many such cycles have come and gone. Again, each yuga is subdivided into 4 yugas. There is no end to all such calculations, and different schools have their theory as to when the present Kali Yuga is to end, when time itself does not exist, as for instance in sleep. What is the use of bothering oneself with all such questions? 20th March 1946 morning. After I left the dining hall at about 11:15 a.m., Bhagavan sent for me there. I was surprised, because it is very unusual for him to send for me. When I went, he told me, poor Mr. Virabdhab Raya. He was once deputy collector at Chittor and was last at Bellary, is no more. When the letter was shown to me this morning, I looked for you in the hall to tell you, but you were not there. The son has written. It seems there was a minor operation. We don't know what it was. Again in the afternoon, Bhagavan asked me if I was not writing to Mr. V's son. I replied, the son may not even remember me. They may not expect any letter from me. I was just then reading dialogues from the Upanishads by Swami Shivananda Saraswati, and almost the first story there is that of Nachaketas. So I reminded Bhagavan that soon after Mr. V came to Bhagavan for the first time from Chittor, he wrote an article comparing Bhagavan to Nachaketas. He had a notion that Bhagavan was an incarnation of Nachaketas. Bhagavan said, yes, I remember the article. He wrote one or two more articles also besides that one. In the evening, some gentlemen came and recited Samaveda before Bhagavan. It was very pleasant and moving to hear. Have you heard it recited, Samaveda? It's very melodious. It's totally different than the other Vedas.
You heard some recitation?
Yeah, the ashram, someone was doing it. They sing it sort of, and it's melodious. It's not so much like the chanting. 21st, probably go online, look up
I
some
heard
of
some
it.
excerpts of it. I know what you mean by
Yeah.
the melody.
21st March 1946. Balaram came across a Sanskrit poem in which the hill called Anai Malay, Elephant Hill, near Madurai, is mentioned. He mentioned it to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan said, yes, there is such a hill near Madurai. From a distance, it looks like a big elephant lying down. I have seen it. The word Anai Malay reminded Bhagavan of the first stanza in Tirugyana Sambandar songs, in which Anai Malay is referred to, and Bhagavan quoted the song. It begins, Manin Nor Riuri. Tamil, I'm reading here. No one knows what it means, and after hearing me, they can't figure it out either. And Bhagavan explained, she's Tamil. Both her parents are Tamil. She knows exactly, right? But your mother knows some Tamil, right?
Yeah, she speaks.
And Anil learned it from his mother. Right? You can read it, right, Anil?
No, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
He can read it, but he doesn't know what it means.
Oh, well, that's not important.
Yeah. I know that means elephant hill.
The Madurai king, Pandyan, was inclined towards Jainism. His wife was a daughter of the Chola king and was attached to Shaivism. When she heard of the great Saint Gyanasambandar and his doings and of his camping at Vedaranyam, the Pandyan queen, with the help of a minister who was also attached to Shaivism, sent an invitation to the saint to visit Madurai and convert the Pandya king to Shaivism. The saint came accordingly. But when the queen saw he was a mere boy of about 10 or even less, she had serious misgivings whether he could be a match for all the big Jain leaders surrounding the king, and whether by inviting this child she had put him in jeopardy. When the saint noticed this, he sang these songs addressed to the queen and assuring her, I am not in any way inferior to these Jains. The Lord is within me. Don't therefore be afraid. The songs which follow mention the names of Jain leaders, referring to them in contempt and stating, I am not inferior to all these, as the Lord is within me. It is amusing to read those songs. Bhagavan added, this was after the saint came to Madurai. When the invitation reached Vedaranyam, and Gyanasambandar wanted to start from Madurai, Appar, who was with Sambandar, said, do not start today. The day is not auspicious for you. They, the Jains, are terrible and powerful persons. Thereupon, Gyanasambandar sang the Kolaru Partikam, beginning in which again he says, as the Lord is within me in my heart, no days, no planets can affect me adversely, and every day of the week is equally auspicious. In the afternoon, I brought the Tevaram for reference and picked out the above two songs, and Bhagavan read them, a few of them aloud. In the Madurai poem, Bhagavan referred to the last stanza and said, when I explained the first stanza in the morning, I gave the meaning as because the Lord is within me, though the words only mean because there is the Lord. I was wondering whether I was justified in my interpretation. I find in the last stanza it is clearly mentioned by the saint himself that what he meant was because the Lord is within me. Besides, the same is clear from the whole of the Kolaru Partikam. Look at the last verse in the Madurai decade. With what authority he sings. No harm can approach those who sing these songs of the king of Shiali and the master of Tamil. Similarly, in the last songs, he says, by my order, those who read these shall be saved. This evening also, Samaveda was recited. Just to let you know, this whole conversation has been recorded on a Zoom recorder, and it'll be uploaded to the internet under audiobooks at arunachala.org.
To give a small, short background of it, usually in the ashram, we put the Veda chanting recorded from the Sri Ramanashramam at 4:30. After 45 minutes, usually the tea is prepared. He used to sit around Dennis and he used to read like this, informally, and it was so nice. Thank you, Dennis. Now, I request Anand Ramanan, President of the Sri Ramanashramam, to speak a few words, please. Anand?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Dear friends and Sri Bhagavan, it's my honor to participate in this special satsang where we are reflecting the role of Sri Dennis Hartel in our lives, especially our spiritual one merged in Sri Bhagavan and his teachings. He uniquely and gently touched every one of us and is continuing to do so. For Dennis the Advaitin, there is no coming or going, only being. Unlike most of you, Dennis came into my life through photographs. When my father visited USA on an official business trip in mid-70s, he spent a week in the New York and Nova Scotia with Sri Bhagwat and his fellow ashramites. Appa came back with a huge stack of photos and a greater impression of the sincere group of devotees in Arunachala Ashrama, including Dennis, Darlene, and Evelyn, along with Joan and Matthew. The images of a serene young man sincerely serving Bhagavan struck a chord with me even as a teenager. Over the years, his friendship, gentle guidance is something I've come to treasure. There are three important attributes or qualities for one on this spiritual path as a devotee of Bhagavan. to be a dhiran, that is, to be steadfast, firm achiever. To have qualities of sahajam, one who is natural with everyone, a child with a child, a scholar with a scholar. To have samatva, equanimity, equal consideration towards all human beings and even animals. One can see that our Dennis with sadhana over the years exemplified these three attributes every day. I'm sure every one of us is now thinking of personal examples of these attributes with our Dennis as I speak. On a personal level, I still remember Dennis spontaneously coming to Michigan when my son Advait was born in December. He drove all through the night from Buffalo in winter to see him, spent the afternoon with us, and turned around and went back. Every year, he's part of our family when we gather in Duke Hospital in my brother Ravi's memory for the brain tumor walk and participate in the satsang that evening. His quiet but strong presence is a source of solace for the family. His sense of humor is amazing, and I will state two examples. Everyone knows our Arthur is a huge admirer of Krishna Das's kirtans. Once, when he came to know that I too liked that, he went down and burned a CD of the latest album. Dennis kept looking at this and, without baiting an eyelid, remarked, "Anand, so now you too are like our Arthur, Krishna Das's Das." The second incident was, there was a few years ago for the California satsang, there was a problem with the main speaker who was not sure of appearing. And when Sunita asked me to invite John Grimes to speak, and what transpired was that both the speakers ended up showing. And then his comment at that was priceless. So he said, "So now we have two speakers who are going to speak for 15 minutes each about the importance of silence." In Appalapattu, Bhagavan tells us how to live our life. He says, the qualities of Santatan Salitpara Santoshamagave. That is, one should work away untiring, steady, and being cheerful. Dennis exemplified these qualities. Friends, devotees of Sri Bhagavan, like Dennis and many before him, are signposts for us on this path. They show us the living presence of Bhagavan's teachings and its transformative power by their own life examples. For that one, I would quote a very big example of Nishkamya Karma. Remember how hard Dennis worked for this current building of Arunachala Ashrama, including, as he used to say, signing on financial documents, something which he never did, building the shrine and maintaining it, and then just walk away from it. There are two random quotes I like to quote which reflect Dennis's life. The first one is from the Greek philosopher Epictetus. Quote, "Remember that you are an actor in play, and the playwright chooses the manner of it. If he wants it short, it is short. If long, it is long. If he wants you to act a poor man, you must act the part with all your powers. For your business is to act the character that is given to you and act it well. The choice of the caste is another's. The next one. Our God is revealed in our hearts, our breath, our actions, and in every person whose life we touch. By this, Dennis represented his master Bhagavan very well. I'd like to conclude this talk on a happier note. I am very sure that we'll all meet Dennis one day. A few months ago, before he left the ashram, I was discussing a future project for Sri Ramanashramam, a project where some cottages will be built for where long-standing devotees of Sri Bhagavan can come and spend their autumn of their lives in Arunachala. Dennis enthusiastically stood up and told me, sign me up first for that project. So, Dennis, wherever you are, I know you're listening, please know that I'm holding you to your word. Thank you, friends. Namo Ramana.
Thank you, Anand. I request Darling, one of the oldest acquaintances of Dennis from Nova Scotia. Please go ahead, Darling.
Okay, hi friends. I'll tell you about one incident that illustrates an aspect of our friend Dennis. In the mornings after the meditation and readings and listening to the chanting, people would get together at the house and gather around a big table and have breakfast. And one morning I was over there when everyone was having breakfast, and Dennis was reading from the newspaper, as he would usually do, but he wouldn't read the main highlights of the day or the day before or the main events that were going on. He would read humorous events. And this one time he was reading something, it was really silly, and I just looked at him and said, like, what are you doing? And he said, it's my goal to keep things light. Okay, fine, he went on. And then the rest of the day, I was just walking around the ashram grounds with him. And for the first time, it struck me, yes, it is his goal to keep things light. Everybody he'd pass, they were working at painting or gardening or some job around the ashram, and he'd say something to them. He'd tease them about the job they were doing or some other they were wearing or something. He would, you know, make fun of it in a light way. And I saw how he really worked at keeping things light. And so I just want to say, here's to Dennis's humor and lightness. Namaskar.
Thank you, Darling. Now
You're welcome.
Lavanya is going to sing. Lavanya?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We had a great fortune of composing and reciting 5 Tamil Venbas on the occasion of Dennis' visit in New Jersey on April 29th of 2019. So I'm having a great pleasure of reciting these in presence of Dennis on that day. I will be reciting the same 5 Venbas today. அருணை ரமணதல ஆசிரமம் மேற்கில்
உருவம் கோலத்தனை தந்து அருணை ரமணதல ஆசிரமம் நேர்கில் உருவம் கோலத்தனை தந்து பருவம் 20 மூர்கொண்டு சாதகர் டென்னிஸ் கிருபை அதை போற்றி வாழ்த்து டென்னிஸ் கிருபை அதை போற்றி வாழ்த்து இப்படி உள்ளார் எனக்கான இவ்வுலகில் இப்போது இங்கே இப்படியார் இப்படி உள்ளார் எனக்கான இவ்வுலகில் இப்போது இங்கே இப்படியார் தாப்பாது காண்டுளம் தன்னுள் சீரக்க தமதன்பின் மாண்பால் உள்நிலை நின்று தமதன்பின் மாண்பால் உள்நிலை நின்று ஓர்துளமுன்மை உணரும் உணர்வோடு பார்த்துளம் பண்ணாள் அதை பற்றி ஓர்துளமுன்மை உணரும் உணர்வோடு பார்த்துளம் பண்ணாள் அதை பற்றி ஆர்தல்லாவார் பெயர் இந்நாள் அடியார் பணியில் தவம் செய்யும் புன்சிரிப்பு சாது பணியில் தவம் செய்யும் புன்சிரிப்பு சாது நல்ல கதை சொல்லுவார் தக்க வழி காட்டுவார் மெல்ல தவம் செய்யுமாறு இம்மனம் நல்ல கதை சொல்லுவார் தக்க வழி காட்டுவார் மெல்ல தவம் செய்யுமாறு இம்மனம் வெல்லுவார் இன்ப ரமண புகழ் சொல்லுவார் சொல்லாது துன்பம் துடைக்கும் தொண்டு சொல்லாது துன்பம் துடைக்கும் தொண்டு அருணை அருளை பருக உருகி இருப்பில் பெருகி திருவாய் அருணை அருளை பருக உருகி இருப்பில் பெருகி திருவாய் குருவின் குருவில் கருணை தருவாய் முருகும் திருநாமம் ஆர்த்தல்லவர் முருகும் திருநாமம் ஆர்த்தல்லவர்.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lavanya. Now, Anil Sharma will speak a few words. Anil?
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Dear friends, it is indeed a privilege to be here with you all to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of Dennis's leaving for Solitude. Dennis has surrendered totally to Sri Bhagavan and has placed all his burdens at his feet. And they are now for Bhagavan to bear. How nice it was to hear the morning reading, wasn't it? It felt like we were all sitting right in front of him together again. I have said to many of our friends, we may be able to travel the world over, but we may not find another like Dennis. Dennis, without doubt, has led us all to the feet of Sri Bhagavan. Wherever he is at the moment, he is at the feet of Sri Bhagavan. And so, how can we honor him? By abiding ourselves at the feet of Sri Bhagavan. By knowing ourselves as we are and breaking our identification with the transient appearance of mind and body. I just want to mention a couple of incidences involving Dennis, which you might not have heard before. I was working in the hospital one weekend, being a physician there, and I was surprised to see Dennis come into the hospital. He requested me to come and see a patient who wasn't feeling too well and who was in the car outside. So I said, yeah, okay. We went outside to assess the patient. When I went outside, there was Shep, the ashram's German shepherd, lying in the back of the station wagon with his paw bandaged up. Now, you have to remember, Shep was no ordinary dog. He attended all the temple pujas, parayanams every day like clockwork. And sometimes Dennis would be away for an extended period of time. And at that time, Shep would go next door to Mr. Connell's to stay. Shep wouldn't return to the ashram while Dennis wasn't there. Now, nobody knew when Dennis was coming back, but somehow, on a particular day, invariably, on the day Dennis returned, without any notice to any of us, Shep would come back to the ashram and sit on the ashram's front steps. You know, to give us the idea, hey, look, Dennis is returning today. And in fact, Shep did know that Dennis was returning, and Dennis did return that very day. This happened time and time again. Such was the connection between Dennis and Shep. So when I asked Dennis what happened, he said Shep had cut his paw on some barbed wire and needed some help. So when we looked, I could see that Shep's toe was cut badly and was hanging on just by some skin. So I went inside and got the surgical instruments, and with Dennis as the chief surgical assistant, did the necessary removal of the toe portion and repairs. I was thinking this was certainly an unusual place in the back of the station wagon in the parking lot of the hospital. Certainly not an ordinary patient, Shep. What to say of the chief surgical assistant, Dennis? The good news is Shep got to keep his healed paw, and I got to keep my job for a bit more. So the last incident is that every May 21st was Save the Fish Day. What did this mean? Well, in Kejamakujik Park in Nova Scotia, close to the ashram, there's a beautiful river, and fish migrate up that river every year. However, they get stuck at a big waterfall there because they can't jump high enough to get above it. So Dennis came up with the idea for us to lean over that deep, swift, and cold running water and catch the fish that were trapped in the pools of the foot of the falls with our bare hands in order to transport them above the falls. Okay, let me slightly correct that. His idea was for me to lean over the deep, swift, and cold running water, and he would hold me from the belt from behind so I wouldn't fall in. We would catch a fish and carry it above the falls and deposit it into the calm river above. By doing this, the fish and of course the whole ecosystem was saved. I give you these two small examples just to show you what compassion Dennis shows to all living beings, not to just us as fellow devotees to whom he displays unlimited kindness and friendship, but to all animals and all lives, just as Sri Bhagavan had shown. And I want to say that we have been fortunate to see before our very eyes the ideals of devotion, dedication, and service exemplified by Dennis. I am sure each one of us will have many examples of the same. We will all share them together, hopefully in person, should Dennis return to our midst, which is our ardent hope. In the meantime, we will wait just like Shep did. Should he decide not to return, of course, then we can rest assured that Dennis will continue to guide and inspire us all, and we can be like the fish, knowing that we have been picked up from the whirlpool of life and placed in the placid waters at the feet of our master. So Dennis, today we will eat this cheesecake in your honor with tears of gratitude in our eyes. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Anil. Evelyn? Evelyn?
Here I am. Can I be heard?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Greetings, friends, from Sri Ramanachalam Mandir in Ogdensburg in the far north, but not quite as far north as Anil. The name of my memoir of Dennis is A Life Devoted to Life's Highest Calling. I came to Arunachala Ashram in the summer of 1971. Dennis came a few months later. It was a cold December day and snow was falling, and Dennis camped out on the cold cement step of the storefront on East 6th Street in Manhattan that was Arunachala Ashram at the time. There, Dennis awaited Arunachala Bhakta Bhagavat, who was traveling to welcome him from his apartment in the outer borough of Brooklyn. Apparently, Bhagavat's trip took quite a while. So Dennis waited patiently in the snow and the cold. And this event inspired many pages in Bhagavat Ji's prayer manuscript, pages that pay tribute to the nobility, the sincerity, the one-pointedness, and the earnestness of the young man who that night itself spread out his sleeping bag on the floor of the kitchen in the storefront and dedicated his life and service to devotees of Bhagavan from then on. In my early memories of Dennis, I see a young, tall man of noble mien marching with purpose from the house to the temple in Nova Scotia, ever focused on spiritual practice. I can see Dennis sitting up close to the shrine, singing bhajans with heartfelt one-pointedness. From those days on until Dennis entered his time of solitude, I came to see him as the friend of my soul. Friendship was a big word from early on with us in the ashram, as Bhagavat Ji used to tell us all, never give up your right to call a friend. We saw the friendship among us as the glue that would hold us together and sustain us as we pursue our life's ideals of service, surrender, and self-knowledge. I think that Dennis's willingness to surrender all in the pursuit of his highest aspirations led many devotees to think of him over time as our friend in chief. The first time that I was preparing to go to Sri Ramanashramam on my own, in the late 1970s, I remember traipsing around Lower Manhattan with Dennis by my side, guiding my purchase of necessities, clothesline, and who knows what all. I suppose it was his wish that my time there might confer on me the same deep peace it would have bestowed on him. During that same pilgrimage, I had the blessing of spending time in the presence of Vishwanath Swami. During the summer of 2004, Dennis made it possible for Darlene and me to travel together to India for a couple of weeks, soul refresher time. My hubby Paul's MS had progressed to the point that he was in need of companionship. So Dennis, Dave Rubinson, and Peter Fell came up to the Thousand Islands and gave Paul company, and Darlene and I took off for India. Before long, Dennis was signing their emails, the North Country Boys. It was an intercontinental celebration of Bhagavan's grace, the happy memories made possible by this kind gesture of blessed friendship would take far more than 5 minutes to detail. Dennis's one-pointed focus on meditation resulted in an amazing gift for managing the details of everyday life, as he had learned not to waste time on useless thinking. Taking Bhagavat's admonition to remember to call a friend when in trouble, I once called Dennis in a negotiation with a used car salesman from the used car lot. Dennis told me to make sure the price the salesman offered was the final price. And so I did, I think. My last vivid memory of Dennis is from the fall of 2019, when he came up to Ogdensburg, New York for the Samprokshanam of the Ogdensburg Mandir. Spiritually, Dennis seemed to me ablaze with an ecstatic spirit of renunciation. Here, Dennis spoke of the bliss of looking into the gracious glance of Bhagavan's eyes as the fulfillment of life and the summum bonum of existence. Whether or not we see Dennis again in this life, he is certainly ever with us, even as the grace of Bhagavan, who is, after all, our number one friend in chief, always with us in all matters that we entrust to him, great and small. That's it for me.
Thank you, Evelyn. Now, Hema and Badri are going to chant.
Namaskar, everyone. Just a 1 minute background on why we chose this song. This is from Ramanasuti Panchakam, a song that is very dear to me. And, we were one of many devotees, very grateful to Bhagavan for giving us the opportunity to spend a few years with Dennis and in his company. One particular day in 2016, back then, my husband and I used to work in the city together, and many evenings we would just go to the New York ashram and spend days together and come back home on the weekends. On this particular day, I recall distinctly, I was chanting this, and then I don't know how long I was sitting in the shrine. It was late in the evening, and Dennis had already retired upstairs, and my husband was still not back from work. I felt somebody gently tapping on my shoulders, and when I opened my eyes, Dennis was standing there, and he said, Badri must be here any minute. Haven't you prepared his dinner? Why don't you go lay a plate for him? Because we were supposed to leave that evening, and late that night. I went and I did that, and my husband came, he ate, and as we were about to leave, Dennis was standing there with a cup of hot tea in a to-go cup. And he said, I know you're going to be the one driving and you need this. So many such incidents. We are very grateful to Bhagavan for giving us that opportunity. And we wish Dennis a very happy birthday wherever he is. And with that, we will sing Ponnolir Pattu from Ramana Stuti Panchakam. Ponnolir Padivinane Purana Vadanatane Tanvarum Swanubhuti Tarayalamanakkavele Unnarum Pugalai Ketta Ulagelam Thedi Vande Ennarul Iraye Gnana Ramanane Jodi Kundre Jodiye Vadivai Nindra Sonama Sailam Dannil Vediya Uruvinodu Virupakshagurayin Megum Adiye Anadi Vaipe Amalane Ramana Ennai Sodiya Dandu Kolvai Sirpara Swarubaniye Sirparananda Varge Sivatodum Kalanda Tene Arpudananda Page Padanga Agandane Ramana Unnai Karpaga Taruvai Nadi Kadithadum Dodi Vande Virpana Uruve Kavai Vimalane Arukandande Kanvidai Thalir Porpadam Tamiyanin Siratil Chudi Nondida Varvadevi Nodiyadil Bavanoi Poka Andana Amarar Kana Arunivai Ramana Mona Yendanal Adaivan Unnai Iruvidi Maniye Sollai Maniyana Pugalvadallam Matrondrum Ariyavile Animayil Nindru Yanum Alaruvadarindidayo Taniyana Tagapeyundra Sadukena Yenaiviltoda Tuniyadai Jnanabala Sundara Ramana Potri Ramanane Jagattinodum Raviyudum Kanangalano Ramanane Agattiladum Ratina Chudalvilakam Ramanane Vimala Veda Ratina Padum Devan Ramanane Jnana Natil Ramitidum Marasai Nindra Nindridum Nimai Gudanmai Nimidatil Niki Nenjai Andrayan Virumalayந்து Arindida Alagan Padam Sendrida Nirtum Soma Sekara Ramana Murti Yenperum Tuyaram Nika Ekane Yoga Valve Valvidum Munegalnodu Vadivuru Namamellam Tandida Jnana Parvai Thalalai Thanakul Vaitoi Ardidum Yoga Jnana Ramanane Alagan Mikkoi Sundidum Sudare Sona Malaivala Punida Devi Devane Ramana Padam Tedine Tevitanyana Bhavana Dida Mona Paramporul Uruvinane Jivanum Sivamum Nundrai Tekiye Ulattinane Savadum Pirappumilla Tattuva Mudivai Nindroi Nindridum Sona Sailam நிலைத்திடும் ரமணன் வாழி மின்றிகள் சடையனோடு விருபாஷருகையும் வாழி வென்றிடும் துன்பம் போக்க வேங்கட ரமணன் சொல்லும் பொன்றிகள் விருத்த மாலை பொலிவுற வாழி வாழி நின்றிடும் சோன சைல நிலைத்திடும் ரமணன் வாழி மின்றிகள் சடையனோடு விருபாஷருகையும் வாழி வென்றிடும் துன்பம் போக்க வேங்கட ரமணன் சொல்லும் பொன்றிகள் விருத்த மாலை பொலிவுற வாழி வாழி. ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய.
Thank you, Hema and Badri. Now Harimurthy is going to speak a few words. Hari.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I'm beginning with a quote from the last email that Dennis wrote to his friends, titled Refuge. Quote, "I've put all my faith in Bhagavan's guiding presence, and all of you should do the same and celebrate with me this new direction in my life. Does not the Lord of the universe sustain the trees of the forest, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea? Will he ever forsake me? How is it possible? And how wonderful it is to want nothing from the world but the opportunity to abandon all hopes, all fears and desires and rest in him." End quote. I first saw Dennis at the Ramanashramam in Tiruvannamalai around 1997. I did not interact with him then, except thinking how Sri Bhagavan attracts so many devotees all around the world to his abode. Nearly 21 years later, I met Dennis at the Arunachala Ashrama in New York in the fall of 2018. Therefore, one may say that I'm the most inexperienced novice and perhaps the most unqualified to talk about Dennis in this satsang, where several other devotees have known him for many decades. So please forgive me and this childish act of audacity. When I first saw Dennis in 2018, he struck a deep chord in me even before I got to exchange a single word with him. There were many, many things that stood out. His simplicity, his warmth, and the way he went about talking to everyone. Without knowing anything else about him at the time, the deepest thing I felt was his unconditional surrender to Sri Bhagavan. As a third generation devotee of Sri Bhagavan, I never had a pleasure of meeting any of the old devotees. Something in me told me that Dennis belonged to that caliber of devotees who served Sri Bhagavan in his physical form. However, I had no way to know any of that during that first meeting. Subsequently, I got to hear stories about Dennis from very many friends and devotees of Sri Bhagavan. Funnily enough, it was Dennis who introduced me to those devotees and made them as my friends in his own way. In a sense, I had only a very short and yet meaningful time to get to know Dennis and form a very deep devotion to his devotion to Sri Bhagavan. Among many things, Dennis had this incredible ability to say the exact right thing at the right moment to a devotee. I have two incidents to recollect today. In the early summer of 2019, I began reading the archives of the Maharishi newsletter from 1991 one by one. Right around that time, I began to be very attracted to Tamil literature and particularly to Thayumanavar, a saint poet who lived in the 15th century. Bhagavan had a very high regard for him, and there was a great article written in the July-August 1995 edition of the Maharishi newsletter. This article provided English translations of Thayumanavar's 10 verses, which were selected by Sri Bhagavan. It was very difficult to track those 10 verses in Tamil based solely on the translation presented in the article. So I sent an email to Dennis, who was in Nova Scotia at that time, to check if he knew what the original Tamil verses were. The very next day, Dennis responded to me with the email that he would send me if he found them. I left this matter at that, as Dennis was in Nova Scotia, and it'd be very unlikely that I would see the original 10 verses anytime soon. And somehow, the very next day, As early as 7:21 a.m. Eastern Time, I got an alert in my iPhone indicating an email from Dennis. It would be unusual to get an email from Dennis that early from Nova Scotia. When I opened the email, it read as follows: Namaskar Hari. I was surprised when I found the Tayumana verses right on the top of a pile of papers I pulled out after arriving here. I scanned them this morning and they are attached. In him, Dennis. This simple act of scanning these Tamil verses, printed 70 years ago, as mundane an act as it could be considered, somehow indicated to me the surrendered state with which Dennis led his life. Every genuine ask of him got a reply from him. The second incident was even more interesting. Along with Swaminathan's family, we visited the Nova Scotia ashrama during August 2019 to spend a week there in meditation. A week before our trip, I had a very vivid dream. In the dream, I entered the old hall at Ramanashramam, and Sri Bhagavan was seated in the northeastern corner, reclining on his sofa with a gentle smile on his luminous face. I felt so much thrill seeing Bhagavan and his lustrous smile. I prostrated and sat in the first row facing him. I gently closed my eyes in meditation. Someone tapped me on my right shoulder and said in a whisper, which I recognized to be Muruganar, quote, "You have Paramatma right in front of you. Why do you close your eyes to realize him? You can just see him right here." Unquote. I instantly opened my eyes to see Sri Bhagavan still reclining on his sofa with his gentle smile, showering love with his kind eyes. And in a few seconds, the face of Sri Bhagavan changed, while all of his body remained exactly as it was, clad in kaupina, and this time it was the face of Dennis with his gentle smile. Then I must have gone into a deep sleep. That dream was so vivid that even today, roughly 15 months later, it is as if I had the dream yesterday night. When we were at Nova Scotia, we looked forward to the daily evening walks with Dennis to feed the fish in the pond, as very many of you may know, a practice he kept up for the past few decades. During one of those fish feeding trips, I told Dennis about this dream. After a few minutes of silence, Dennis continued to talk about how the fish welcomed eating their daily portions of corn that were fed to them over the years by him. However, 2 days later, when I had a chance to walk with Dennis to feed those fish again, Dennis told me about a dream he himself had a few years ago, in which Dennis was in the old hall as one of Sri Bhagavan's servants fanning Sri Bhagavan using the panka. Yes, Dennis wanted to be a servant of Sri Bhagavan and a servant of all of Sri Bhagavan's devotees. That was his life's mission, he said once to me. As we gathered to celebrate the first anniversary of his refuge, we wonder in which part of the world is Dennis residing right now. I know Dennis is right here, listening to us talk, pray, sing, and celebrate his devotion. He is just patiently awaiting us to recognize him as he is in our hearts, smiling and giving us perfect guidance as he did in person to all of us before. How do I know this? Because Dennis himself left us a clue in his last email. Quote, "I fully believe, though physically absent, I'll now extend a greater service to the ashrama than ever before. You may not understand this, but I believe in time you will arrive at the same conclusion. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya."
Thank you, Hari. Saibish?
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead, Saibish.
Thank you, Mohan. Thank you, everyone. Just like Hari said, I only know Dennis for some years, exactly May 2013. But whatever little spiritual journey I can say is closely linked with him, just like many of you. I had close association with Dennis when he came to Tonawanda, Niagara Falls, to take care of his elderly mother towards the fag end of her life. That gave me some physical proximity to go and meet him and walk around the Niagara Falls area many occasions. I must say that Bhagavan let his close devotees, as you know, to enact some part of Bhagavan's own life. And I feel the way Dennis took care of his mother to the last minute is exactly like Bhagavan took care of his own mother. It was not easy. Many days, Dennis didn't even have any sleep. He was getting up every hour to take care of his mother, and that continued over a year. But still, he would let me come and join him for the few hours of walk. The association with nature he closely, he enjoyed. I often felt kind of stealing away his time, or only little time he had for leisure, but he insisted that I come. And many of the walks I did behind him, I kind of had a feeling that I'm an attendant of Bhagavan and I'm walking behind Bhagavan. One of the other thing I noticed that how effectively he managed his little time. There were occasions where he and I gotten into a kayak in Niagara River, and then soon he will set me up and then he will pick up the phone and talk to some other devotees like me who have some questions to clear and things to clarify. Another incident about his magnanimity that comes to me is when I moved from Toronto to Victoria. Toronto, a place with around 30, 40 devotees. We used to have regular satsang, and Victoria, I didn't have any. And I was in that kind of a despair. I got a call from a lady who was around 60 plus, recently heard of Bhagavan, and she got my number as a devotee. I was very happy to jump in, but she was going through a tough time. She was going through a divorce. To cut the story short, I was jumping in with that relation. I wanted to help as a Bhagavan's devotee. There was a possibility that she may lose her home and then she will be homeless. I was thinking about bringing her to my house, but I was debating, I'm new to the place. I have 2 little kids. My wife is pregnant with the 3rd one. I didn't have the magnanimity, but at the same time, I had this desire. I discussed with Dennis, as usual I do with many of the difficult decision making. He listened very carefully. He heard the pros and cons of it, and finally he said, Saibish, if it ever comes to a point that you want to help her and she need the help and you cannot do it, give my number. I will accommodate her in New York ashram. And he hasn't even seen that person. He hasn't even heard from her. He hasn't even talked to her. And that was Dennis's magnanimity to the fellow devotees. To get us out of get them out of trouble, he is willing to take any amount of trouble. As Bhagavan's will, nothing was needed. But that was an example, showed me how devoted Dennis is to his fellow devotees. There are many instructions he gave to me and other devotees over time. On one occasion, he said, 3 things you have to concentrate. One is continue the sadhana that you're doing. Secondly, you want to stay out of conflicts. Conflicts are unwanted thoughts. To decrease the unwanted thoughts, you have to decrease the wanted thoughts that are desires. So you try to decrease your desires. And third is a word he said, perseverance. And I think in my mind, he is that word personified. Whatever he does, in sadhana, in seva or whatnot, his perseverance personified. Another occasion, he said, if you have to really realize, you have to just forget that personality of yours. Along with that, he said, the mind that is a trickster will give us trouble to the end. So best not to identify with the mind and its moods. And finally, on December 2nd, the day he left a message saying that, quote, Bhagavan is with you all the way. He just wants us to persevere. Again, that word came. Then he gives everything. unquote. On many occasions, when I kind of complained to Dennis that, I can't come to New York Ashram, I cannot go to Arunachala, I can't do this, I want to really go, then he would reassure me, saying, the mental contact is the best. That is the best contact than even going or, doing something. And now he has left us in a position wherever we want to have contact with him, the mental contact still remains. And as many before me said, wherever Dennis is, he's at Bhagavan's feet. And let us all try to merge to Bhagavan's feet to be with Dennis. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Saibish. Now Gayatri Govindan is going to sing.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I'll be chanting a few verses from Bhagavad Gita selected by Bhagavan. This is part of the Sanskrita Parayanam. This comprises about 43 verses, but I'll be chanting the first 12 alone. Sanjay Vacha Tam Tata Kripaya Vishtam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Vishidantamidam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudana Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetram Ityabhidiyate Etadyo veti tam prahuhu kshetrajna iti tadvavidyaha kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarvakshetreshu bharata kshetrajnayor jnanam yattajnanam matam mama ahamatma gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitah aham adischa madhyam cha bhutanamanta eva cha jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmat apariharyate natvam shochitum arhasi न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणः न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे अच्छेद्योऽयम् अदायोऽयम् अक्लेद्यो शोष्य एव च नित्य सर्वगतस्थाणोर् अचलोऽयं सनातनः अविनाशी तु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वम् इदं ततं विनाशम् अव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुम् अर्हति नासतो विद्यते भावो नाभावो विद्यते सतः उभयरोऽपि दृष्टोऽन्त स्तवनयोस्तत्त्वदर्शिभिः यथा सर्वगतं सौक्ष्म्यात् आकाशं नोपलिप्यते सर्वत्रावस्थितो देहे तदात्मानोपलिप्यते न तद्भास्यते सूर्यो न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम अव्यक्तोऽक्षर इत्युक्त तम् आहुः परमां गतिं यं प्राप्य न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम. Thank you. Namo Ramana.
Thank you, Gayatri. Now Sunita is going to speak a few words. Sunita.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Thanks, Mohan. So I had shared some thoughts about Dennis in the video that Akhila created earlier this year in California. It was titled Dennis Hartel and Inspiration. I just added a few more memories, specifically around his guidance on the practice of Bhagavan's teachings. And I'm happy to share the content with all of you today. So I first 2005 when Swami invited him to Bhagavan's Jayanti celebration in California. We exchanged a few words, and as we parted, he said, "The only thing that keeps me going is meeting young people like you who aspire sincerely for the higher life." For 15 years since that first meeting, I have benefited so much from Dennis's friendship, guidance, and above all, his silent presence. I was inspired to memorize Aksharamanamale after listening to him chant the 108 verses with such deep devotion. He encouraged me to visit Sri Ramanashramam in Tiruvannamalai and requested me to send him a detailed report of my visit. I did that in August 2005. I feel fortunate to have been part of his morning schedule whenever he visited California, rising early, listening to the Vedas, followed by coffee, reading, chanting Lalita Sahasranamam, and ending with silent meditation. He needs very little sleep and would be awake even at night, sitting on a chair, meditating. When I asked him about it, he quoted Bhagavan saying, "When the mind merges in the heart, there is no need for sleep." He often said it's our Purva Janma samskaras, latent impressions, and pakwa, spiritual maturity, that determine how well we grasp Bhagavan's teachings. For householders like myself in California, he recommended practicing Atma Vichara when the mind is strong. At other times, when the mind is preoccupied and hard to control, he recommended chanting and praying for a strong mind. When I once asked him about how we could recognize that it was time to give up karma, he said the answer has to come from within. Just like a ripe fruit falls off the tree automatically, when the time is right, karma would drop off naturally. As we all know, he speaks little, but every time I asked him a question, he had the perfect quote from Bhagavan as his response, internalizing the teaching completely and speaking from experience of the self. He never asked us for anything, and like our rishis of yore, effectively led the life of a parivrajaka, even when amidst all of us. Over the years, Dennis has been a great guide, gently bringing me back to Bhagavan's path of self-inquiry every time I wandered away. As an example, I once shared with him a method I learned at a Vedanta class to overcome attachment. The method was to strip an object into its basic elements and thus overcome attraction to the object itself. I thought it was a cool tool to keep the mind in check. Dennis listened to me patiently and then said, "Who is it?" And then said, "Bhagavan has taught us to ask, who is it that is getting attracted? That's all. How can it be easier than that? And you of all people should know better." I'll never forget his voice when he said that, stern by Dennis's standards. To this day, it serves as a reminder to never swerve from Bhagavan's direct path of self-inquiry. He always said Shraddha, faith, Vairagya, dispassion, and Abhyasa, intensity of practice, were the main requirements for success on the path. He encouraged me to not be content with a theoretical understanding of the knowledge, but to strive to reach the inner recesses of the heart center, the seat of Arunachala Ramana. I treasure his Maharshi newsletters that have nourished my soul throughout. I'm also very grateful to Dennis for never letting me lean on him. While he encouraged and inspired me in numerous ways, he always cautioned me to repose my faith in Bhagavan and in no one else, including himself. Only Bhagavan looks after us, he would often say. Dennis's is a life consumed by Bhagavan and his teachings. I have only met Kanakamal once. When I shared with her that I knew Dennis, she said in Tamil, "And the Dennisku Bhagavan Arunachala thavira vera onnum theriyadu," meaning that Dennis knows nothing other than Bhagavan and Arunachala. In chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, amongst thousands of persons, hardly one strives for perfection, and amongst those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Dennis is one of those rare few who actually knows the truth. I have never seen him get angry about anything or with anyone. He said anger was a vasana he never had, even as a child. His purity, gentleness, tranquility, and complete surrender are permanently imprinted in my inner mind. Knowing him has been one of the greatest blessings of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita Parashuraman. Now, Bhaskar. Bhaskar, can you hear me?
Namaskar, devotees. My name is Bhaskar Kumareshan from Washington, D.C. Metro Satsang. I'm happy and blessed to share my days with Dennis. Dennis is a loving and caring person from the first day that I met him back in summer 2016. I got connected with him right away and had a wonderful experience with him. There are many instances to share, but I'm going to share very few instances. In July 2017, our family visited Nova Scotia Ashram from Virginia. We drove all the way. We reached late that day. Dennis was so worried. He asked us, how was your journey? How come you are so late? So he was caring so much about the devotees. Till now, my son recalls the wonderful time visiting the Virupacha cave with Dennis. Dennis is always glad to make himself available for the Bhagavan devotees. He took care of our stay in Nova Scotia Ashram, Untitled Ashram. We had a really good time with him. I have a wish about starting Bhagavan's meditation center in DC metro area. I spoke to Anandana, our current president, in 2018. He told me that please visit India Ramanashram, you will find your answers. So I went to India in February 2019. I was carrying this question, how do I get my answers for the DC center formation? I was looking for Bhagavan's grace. I went to dinner area on first day. I was surprised to see someone who is familiar with smiley face. That's Dennis. Dennis was there at the same time in the India ashram. I didn't ask him anything that time, so I paid my namaskar. Then I went to my dinner. Next day morning, I asked him during breakfast time, Dennis, can we meet today? He told, let's meet in the evening. For some reasons, he stayed back, and after breakfast, he's like, okay, let's talk. So he took me to Koshala in the ashram. We were talking for 30 minutes. I was sharing my ideas. He's listening to it. Then in the evening, he called me. He told me that let's do that. Let's form a center in DC as part of the Untitled Ashrama. Then I met with Ananda Pass and Amma, got her blessings. It was so amazing moment how Bhagavan is guiding us every moment of our life. After that visit, I spoke to our devotees in DC area. Then I am exchanging some emails with Dennis. On November 11th, he was saying, why you are planning for five-year timeline? Why can't you go ahead and start soon? I'm so surprised that, the enthusiasm and his support, how he wants things to happen. He's pushing the timeline. Let's do it in 2023. I'm sure we'll get there sometime with the blessings of Bhagavan, with the guidance of Dennis and other devotees. We had Advent Day celebration in DC area in September 2019. Dennis graciously accepted to stay in our home. That was a very wonderful time. Dennis and other devotees came to our home. Still, I remember the early morning, around 5 o'clock, Dennis was praying in the dark near sofa. When I wake up, even now, I look at the spot. I know Dennis is there. It doesn't matter where he lives. He's always with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Leena Gurunath is going to chant.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. I'll be singing a Kabira song. कबीराचे विणतो शेले कौसल्यचा रामबाई कौसल्यचा राम कबीराचे विणतो शेले कौसल्यचा रामबाई कौसल्यचा राम बाबड्या या भक्तासाठी देव करी काम कौसल्यचा रामबाई कौसल्यचा राम एक एक तारी हाती भक्त गाई गीत एक एक धागा जोडी जानकीचा नाथ राजा घनश्याम कौसल्यचा रामबाई कौसल्यचा राम दास राम नामी रंगे राम होई दास एक एक धागा गुंफे रूप ये पटास राजा घनश्याम कौसल्यचा रामबाई कौसल्यचा राम विणून झर्व झाला शेला पूर्ण होई काम ठाई ठाई शेल्यावरती दिसे राम नाम राम नाम राम नाम दिसे राम नाम गुप्त होई राम कौसल्यचा रामबाई कौसल्यचा राम हळू हळू घडी डोळे पाहे तो कबीर विणुनिया गेला शेला सखा रघुबीर कुठे म्हणे राम, कुठे म्हणे राम, कुठे म्हणे राम, कौसल्यचा रामबाई, कौसल्यचा राम, कबीराचे विणतो शेले, कौसल्यचा रामबाई, कौसल्यचा राम, बाबड्या या भक्तासाठी देव करी काम, कौसल्यचा रामबाई, कौसल्यचा राम. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. Now, Margot Martin is going to read the final email that Dennis Hartel sent after he left the refuge.
My dear friends in Sri Bhagavan, at the age of 18, I decided that I had to find out what the meaning and purpose of life was. I saw no solution in my home, so I wrote a note to my mother, borrowed $20, and left. This journey lasted for about 4 years, during which time I traveled the world over and had many experiences, which brought me to the conclusion that the only meaningful purpose and goal of life was to realize God, or self-realization. My latent samskaras must have played a part to rediscover the teachings that directly resonated with my own experience and understanding. Then I was guided to the Sadguru who perfectly demonstrated them, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. The same year, I arrived at his ashram in New York and dedicated my life to service and the practice of his teachings. Last summer, in the Nova Scotia ashram, a sudden, altogether contrary vision took possession of me and would not let go, even to this day. I could not resist it, nor did I feel that I should, and ultimately surrendered to it. This is what it is. After 48 years of living in his abode, serving him through his devotees, I became possessed, so to speak, with a single aspiration. I felt Bhagavan telling me, now you need only to serve me by remembering me and abiding in me, the self. Hence, you need not continue to serve me physically, but serve me by remembering me and abiding in me. In addition to this, I experienced an intense yearning to simplify my life, to depend upon him alone for all things, and to take complete refuge in him and leave it to him to provide me with whatever is required to fulfill this aspiration, as enunciated by Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. To those who always think of me and engage in exclusive devotion to me, to them whose minds are always absorbed in me, I provide what they lack and preserve what they already possess. Chapter 9, verse 22. Therefore, I'm writing today not only to you, the officers of our Arunachal Ashram, USA and Canada, but to all my friends and well-wishers, to inform you that what happened when I was 18 years old is now repeating itself. By the time you read this note, I'll have already left the ashram for a distant place to fulfill this yearning within me. Believe me, I am no less surprised than you about what you are now reading. After this new aspiration took hold of me in Nova Scotia, and I realized that I must fulfill it, I thought briefly about what direction the ashram would take in my absence. The next day, this concern was completely erased upon rereading what Sri Kundra told Evelyn concerning Bhagavan's ashrams on January 19th, 1983, as recorded in her diary. Not only did I have no doubt after reading that, I fully believed, though physically absent, I will now extend a greater service to the ashram than ever before. You may not understand this, but I believe in time you will arrive at the same conclusion. I ask that you please do not make any efforts to locate my whereabouts. I have put all my faith in Bhagavan's guiding presence, and all of you should do the same and celebrate with me this new direction in my life. Does not the Lord of the universe sustain the trees of the forest, the birds of the sky, the fish in the sea, Will he ever forsake me? How is it possible? And how wonderful it is to want nothing from the world but the opportunity to abandon all hopes, all fears, and desires, and rest in him. Also, do not be too alarmed at this turn of events. Who knows? I may be back in 2 months or 2 years, or at some point in time, you'll come to learn that my journey on earth has come to an end. It is in his hands alone, is it not? Isn't it the same for all of us? Lastly, I wish to express my heartfelt gratitude to all my friends and well-wishers, devotees of the Master, who have unstintingly provided me with their love, support, and kindnesses over many decades. How fortunate I have been in this life to know all of you, to live and serve in his abode, and benefit from your sincere devotion and dedication. I'm attaching a letter that I gave to 2 aspirants this year
I didn't last time.
who had expressed the desire to live in the ashram. It may be useful. Ever yours, in Sri Bhagavan. And he puts this quote afterwards: the consciousness within, purged of the mind, is felt as God. That was Ramana Maharshi. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. I'm Mohan Ramaswamy. I'd like to share a few things. After Dennis left, I am the doormat in the ashram now. I cannot even simply visualize that, how to express that somebody like Dennis, and for me to step in, it is beyond my imagination. That being the case, my relationship with Dennis, it was so nice also to hear the heartfelt experiences and connections about Dennis, very eloquently expressed. My relation with Dennis was slightly or far different than most of the other devotees. I met him about 30 years back. I still remember my father called me from Bangalore telling, hey, I have found the Arunachala Ashrama number. In those times, the communication, there was no internet or anything. And also the communication between Arunachala Ashram and Sri Ramanashram was totally different. As a family, we were always closely connected with Sri Ramanashram for 25 years, even before I met Dennis. We rarely discussed sadhana or practice. Probably he knew I am beyond redemption. Or gently, he brushed aside me, telling that you know all that. We were very nostalgic about discussing the great devotees. Just to mention Sri Ramaswamy Pillai, or Om Sadhu, or Vishwanath Swamiji, Kunju Swami, Kohan, Suri Nagamma, Kanakammal, and the galaxy of devotees, all of whom both of us had seen. Dennis had a great sense of history and dedication to follow up with a lot of old devotees to record their reminiscences through video and audio recording. That generation of devotees who were blessed to interact with Bhagavan are no more there. We owe a deep gratitude to Dennis for us to feel the presence of Bhagavan through those recordings. On the lighter side, the best time I had was on Saturday mornings. I usually used to pick up Dennis who used to accompany me for the Narayana Seva for the homeless conducted by Satya Sai Baba organization. For a number of years, he used to accompany me. The entire Saturday was a Seva day, ending with a very late lunch or early dinner at home. He was a very kind and service-oriented who fervently believed in compassion is the hallmark of spirituality. He strongly believed that spirituality without service leads to dry intellectual egotism. Also, I was a butt of his joke about my frugal eating habit. To quote, I have wasted my entire life in not eating the delicious food prepared by my wife Savitri. Arunachala Ashrama, both in New York and Nova Scotia, are the fruits and testament of his total dedication and service to Bhagavan and his devotees. Personally, I always feel it's a matter of great celebration in the way Dennis left for refuge or solitude. Most of us, we cannot even comprehend the total conviction and fearlessness required to take that step. Bhagavan has taken over the complete control of Dennis' life because of his absolute surrender. Let us all emulate Dennis to surrender to Bhagavan completely. I hope and pray to Bhagavan for him to come back to the ashram for the good of everyone, and I can go back just doing the seva. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Aparna is going to chant the Arunachal Pancharatna.
करुणापूर्णसुधाब्धे कबलितघनविश्वरूपकिरणावल्या अरुणाचलपरमात्मन् अरुणो भवच्चित्तकञ्जसुविकासाय त्वयि अरुणाचलः सर्वम् भूत्वा स्थित्वा प्रलीनमेतच्चित्रम् हृद्यहमित्यात्मतया नृत्यसि भोस्ते वदन्ति हृदयं नाम अहमिति कुत आयाति त्वन्विष्यान्तप्रविष्ट यात्यमलधिया अवगम्यस्वं रूपं शाम्यत्तरुणाचलत्वयि न धीवाब्धौ त्यक्त्वा विषयं बाह्यं रुद्धप्राणेन रुद्धमनसान्तस्त्वां ध्यायन् पश्यति योगी दीतितिमरुणाचलत्वयि महीयं ते त्वय्यर्पितमनसा त्वां पश्यन् सर्वं तवाकृतितया सततं भजते अनन्यप्रीत्या स जयत्तरुणाचलत्वयि सुखे मग्नः श्रीमद्रमण महर्षेः दर्शनमरुणाचलस्य देवगिरा पञ्चकमार्या गीतौ रत्नं त्विदमौपनिषदं हि ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय
Thank you, Aparna. Now, Martin is going to chant in Akarmana.
Om Nakarmana na prajaya dhane na tyage naike amritatvama suhu hare nanakam vihitam guhayam viprajade tajatayo vishanti Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitata Sannyasa Yoga Jataya Shuddha Sattva Aha Te Brahma Loke Tupara Antakale Paramritat Parimucyanti Sarve Tahram Vipapam Parame Eshma Bhutan Tat Pundarikam Puramadya Saggastam Tatrapidahram gaganam vishakastasmin yadantastadupasitavyam yo vedada saraprokto vedante cha pratishtitaha tasya prakritilinasya yah parasa maheshvaraha.